This meeting is being recorded.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for being with us today at the Caring Conference. Debbie's our next presenter and she's going to talk to us about how she used a strategy to manage her days in her career and in caregiving. Take it away, Debbie.
Thank you, Denise, and thank you for having me here. I'm excited. For everyone else, hi, I am Debbie Compton, and I help caregivers learn how to hold on while letting go so that they can have a more peaceful life. I also teach how to deal with drastic mood swings, ways to prevent wandering, what to do during hallucinations or delusions, and how to get a good night's sleep, because that's something that a lot of caregivers miss, and I know I did too. Today, I want to talk to you a little bit about problem solving from briefcase to bedside. And the thing that I found out is that whether you're leading teams located nationwide, like I was for 13 years, or if you're a full-time caregiver, then a lot of the same principles actually apply. So you may be wondering how I came to have such a dramatic change, because I was leading teams nationwide and suddenly everything changed. One of those transformations that Denise talks about. So I live in Oklahoma, and I was working as an assistant director of a nationwide craft store chain that everyone loves. And but my job had me traveling a lot. And so I was working in California when my dad accidentally took my mom's pills. And the additional problem here is that dad had low blood pressure and mom had high blood pressure. And he took her pills, which caused him to crash and nearly go comatose. And so he had to be rushed to the hospital. And I was in California. Then I was on the East Coast when my mom passed out at the Daily Living Center and had to be taken to the hospital. And then the third straw was I was in Colorado when my mother-in-law locked herself out of her home in the middle of a snowstorm. So to say life was stressful would be an understatement. It was very difficult, and we knew something had to change. And so I went to becoming a full-time caregiver, not just of one parent, but three. My dad had Parkinson's, my mother-in-law had Alzheimer's, and my mom still has vascular dementia. So it was quite a challenge. I had no idea what I was doing. I did not set out to be a caregiver. Wasn't on my list. And but sometimes that happens, and life can throw those situations at you, and then you just have to figure out, what are we going to do? And so I felt like I was completely unprepared to be a caregiver, but until I stopped and actually looked and realized that a lot of the things that I used in my work life could still be applied to being a caregiver. And so that's when I decided to pull out my system to be able to use it in caregiving. But before we get into that, I'd like to ask you in the chat, if you could drop in there, what is or was your biggest challenge in caring for another person? Think back, if you're a caregiver, what is or was your biggest challenge that you faced? Was there something that just surprised you, that caught you off guard? And just drop those in the chat, and then we'll take a look at those if we have a chance to a little bit later on too. So, lack of motivation. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Getting her to do things she didn't want to do. That is a big one. That can be a big challenge too. Confidence is huge too. Role reversal. These are all tough. Yes. Geographics. And there are ways that you can help even if you're not in the same geographical location. So there are things you can do there too. Exhaustion is a huge one. Yes, that's being a caregiver. I learned exhaustion like I had never known it before, because with my mother-in-law living with us, and her being up all through the night and watching her all through the day, you get no sleep and you experience exactly what it is. Lack of patience. Yes. Although I'm a patient person. Yes. Oh, you guys are good. Keep them coming. These are awesome. So there are tons and tons of issues we face, so many. And then you're with the situation of, okay, what am I going to do? How am I going to handle this? And since I didn't have a clue, that's why I turned to my system, which is the Airpod system. And Airpod is not something that you stick in your ears. Okay, it's not that at all, but it's a system that I used, a proven system that'll take you all the way from assessing the situation to solving it, and even putting things in place to reduce the repetition. Okay, so what is Airpod? Well, let's go ahead and go to the first slide then. Oh, sorry, go to the next one. I already covered that. There we go. I forgot to tell you to advance. I did that one too. Go ahead. One more. There we go. Airpod system, a brief overview is attitude first. We have to have, and that's our attitude, not theirs. Then we have to identify the problem. We have to do our research in order to fully understand it. We have to develop possible solutions, observe the triggers, and then develop a prevention method. So if you look down, that spells Airpod. Okay, so let's get started on this. Let's go to the first one. And don't worry about that. You can get the slides afterwards too. So you'll have all this information. On attitude, if I don't approach the situation with the right attitude, it's gonna show. And my loved one will feel it and they will react negatively. Even when they're at the stages where they can't communicate very well, the feelings are still there. And they feel when you're frustrated with them and when you're aggravated with them. And so the very first step we have to do is get our attitude in check. We can control our attitudes. They can't control theirs. Okay. We still have the choice. We still have the filters in place, but they do not. So we got to get ourselves, and I love the quote by Chuck Swindoll that he said, I'm convinced life is 10% what happens to me and 90% how I react to it. So going along with our series here, which is transformation, sometimes we need to transform our attitude before we even begin to deal with the situation. We have to take a breath. It actually helps. Take a breath, deep breath, calm ourselves down so that we can be in a situation to evaluate and to see what's going on. Because again, we can't control them, but we can control our attitude. And while you're doing that, a calm, sweet voice can transform that whole situation that might be extremely difficult. Okay, so then the next thing that we need to do, and there we go, is to identify the problem. What are the issues that need to be resolved? So sometimes it's something easy that we can see and we know what's going on. For example, when my mother was saying, I want to go home. I want to go home. Well, that's an easy problem to see what the situation is. We were already home. So that's easy to identify, but sometimes the situation is not so easy to identify. What do you do when suddenly they're crying nonstop and you don't know what's wrong? They can barely speak because they're so upset. Okay, so now the situation's more difficult. It's a process of elimination though, to figure out what's going on and what is the issue that they're facing. So you start looking for clues. Are they bleeding? Are their undergarments wet? Are they in pain? And even if they can't vocalize that they're in pain, you can learn if they're in pain. My mother would just do this. She'd just rub her head. She had a headache. My mother-in-law had trouble with her arms and with her back. Your body instinctively will touch those areas, even when the brain doesn't realize what's going on or don't have the ability to communicate it. Watch for clues. I'm telling you, as a caregiver, one of the very best things that you can do is learn about that individual and get to know them, learn their likes, their dislikes, what kind of food they like to eat, what kind of food they hate. These things can change, but, and somebody said this reminded me of caring for babies. Absolutely. Only this toddler is big enough to get into everything. And so that provides a challenge too. But when you learn them, then it helps you later as the disease progresses. Because in the example of my mother-in-law with Alzheimer's, we were going through a drive-through and I said, what would you like to drink? And she said, well, I'd like a Dawson Packer. Well, there is no Dawson Packer, but I knew what she wanted was a Dr. Pepper. So instead of pointing it out, instead of embarrassing her or anything else, I just said, okay, I'll get you a Dr. Pepper. So it helps in resolving those issues. And plus, if you learn what foods they like, it makes it easier when they can't communicate, but they're hungry and they're telling you they're hungry and they want you to have the answer and you're trying to figure out what it is. And sometimes that turns into a game practically where you're holding up all the different things because you want to show it to them, which helps it identify in the brain better. Seeing a picture, hearing the words gives you a better chance of connecting through to their brain. So when it's a situation, what happens if it's a situation that you haven't faced before? Okay. My dad saw aliens digging a tunnel from his mailbox and up into his house. Okay. So I want to ask you something. This is for the chat also. Have you ever tried to reason with a person who has any form of dementia? Tell me in the chat. How did that go? Did you ever try to convince them that they weren't seeing aliens? That the aliens weren't really there? That they're not seeing what they're telling you that they're seeing? Absolutely, Patty, that does not work. It doesn't work at all because that is their reality. And we have to adjust. I got bitten. Oh, yikes. Okay. Yeah, there's no telling. Caregiving is quite an experience. And if you're not a caregiver, you might be one day, because as the baby boomers age, more and more people are becoming caregivers that never planned to before. So that's why this information is so important for everyone, not just current caregivers, but again, you never know when you might be a caregiver. So prevention is wonderful. So you're exactly right. You can't argue with them. You can't convince them that what they're seeing isn't real. Dad was hallucinating. So, but see, we identified the problem. What's the problem? He's hallucinating. Okay. So Tony Robbins says, identify your problems, but give your power and energy to the solution. And I love that quote because it's don't dwell on the issue. Let's see how we can fix it. Okay. So now we've identified what our problem is. So now let's go to the next step, which is research. We got to do our research to gather data. Now, there's a lot of reputable sites online offering information about difficult behavior. The problem that I ran into is that most of them don't tell you how to deal with it. A lot of them will just say, don't argue. Okay, well, that's good, but that's step one. You need to go beyond that. And there are online support groups on Facebook, through local agencies on aging. Get my tongue tangled up. And some churches and daily living centers also have support groups. Those people can be a great asset to you because they are living with the same situations and possibly the same bizarre behavior. And we're all creative people. A lot of us can come up with great ideas to handle things. And I can tell you, you're going to need more than one idea, one way to solve the problem. So these research sites are ones that I love and that I use to find out about the problem, to learn more about it, what exactly is going on. You can ask doctors and nurses, healthcare professionals. They're in the trenches. They see stuff all the time and they have creative ways of dealing with things as well. And so, utilize those, utilize the resources all around you to do your research, see what you're dealing with, see what it is and possibly what's causing it. Okay. What is it? I want to have you answer something else for me. Okay. What is it that you wish other people knew about dementia? What do you wish other people knew about dementia? Drop that in the chat. And I'll tell you what mine is. It's not their fault. Oh, perfect. Perfect. Yep. Medication. Yes. Can have a strong effect. It's a disease of the brain. Absolutely. So you guys are right on it. You understand it is. And it is a problem that they cannot control. The thing that I wish people understood, that everyone understood, has nothing to do with intelligence, right? The smartest people get it. It is no respecter of persons. And embrace every stage. Great advice, because you have to appreciate where you are. And I just shared this with a person just a couple of days ago when she was complaining about what she was going through with her mother and everything, and how her mother is just, driving her crazy. And I said, well, my advice to you would be, enjoy that she's able to talk and to communicate and to drive you crazy, because this too shall pass. She won't always be able to do that. And then you'll wish that she was able to communicate with you. So we have to enjoy every day as we go through. And I just wish people understood that it's more than memory loss. Memory loss is the little tip of the iceberg, but your brain is your control center. It affects everything, not just your memory and your speech and your processing information and your motor skills. It goes all the way through to affect every part of the being. And so I wish people understood that. And I wish the things that I'm seeing running across here too, you guys are right on target. Those are all great things that I wish people understood as well. And to not get mad and take it out on the person. And then to also realize that it's not the person. And I really had to do that, is to separate. This is not my mom. My mom never would have said those things to me. This is the disease that's speaking. If you're going to get angry at the disease. Don't get angry at your loved one. Okay. So now that we've got our attitude in check, we've identified what the problem is, and we've done our research. Now we need to move on to some possible solutions. Okay, so we'll switch that slide there. There we go. So possible solutions. We got to figure out what are some ways that we can solve this issue. One is just to reassure. A lot of times that's all they need. Maybe they're just wanting to communicate with you, but they no longer have the ability. So they may say something silly or crazy or whatever, just to connect with you, just to get attention. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm a huge believer in hugs. And I love hugs. I think everybody needs hugs. I think they're healing. I think they're therapeutic. And so just hug them, just love on them, let them know you're there for them, validate. Exactly. Reassure, validate, let them know you hear what they're saying. And in the case that I talked to you about, my loved one wanting to go home, and we're already home, then what I would do in a case like that is to talk in a calm voice and a lower register, because it's harder to hear the higher register as well, and just validate her feelings. I understand that you want to go home. See what you're doing? You're affirming that person. I understand you want to go home. And you're also reminding, if they're in the later cases and they've already forgotten what it was they were saying. But this works really well, to just let them know I hear you, and then distract, because you can't take them home if they're already home. So you can say things like, and this could be controversial, but I'm okay with little white lies, as some people say. But what I do is to say, okay, I can take you after a while, but first I have to finish this one thing. Therapeutic fibs. Exactly, Brad. Thank you. That's what I was looking for, because it is therapeutic. It helps calm her down. It helps reassure her. And I can't actually take her home. We are home. But the distraction can be, ask them if they'd like something to snack on. Ask them if they'd like Jello. Would you like a little pudding? Would you like whatever? And we'll go in a minute, because you're reaffirming that you heard them, but why don't we do this first? Because as you know, a person with dementia is going to forget. Now, depending on what phase of dementia they're at, 3 minutes, is that what you're saying?
Yep. You're
Okay.
at 3 minutes.
I was like, 3, what? Okay. Oh, okay. All righty. So I'll pick it up. So they're going to forget. So just go ahead and reassure, distract them, provide relief. If they're in pain, if they're cold, give them a sweater, whatever the case may be, but meet their need, and always focus on the solution, and don't be consumed by the undesirable circumstance that you're in right now, which is what we're talking about, to focus on the solution. Okay. So the next thing that we need to do is to observe the triggers. What's causing it? Is it sundowners, which happens a lot? There are things that you can do to minimize that. Is it caffeine? My mother-in-law could not have caffeine after 4 p.m. or it guaranteed we were having a bad night and she was going to be up all night. Are they overly tired? Then they're frustrated. They don't feel good. New medication, as we mentioned before. Not enough exercise, overstimulation, or too many naps during the day. So all these things can be triggers which can come up and cause you issues. So what I did was start recording everything. Record what they ate, what they drank, how many times they slept, movies that they watched. That can also be a trigger, can scare them. My dad was watching the news and he was terrified. So you look for those issues and you'll find them. Then the very last step we need to do is to develop prevention tactics. So you can prevent it from happening. From my mother-in-law who's wanting to wander all the time and go roaming out constantly, put the purse away, put the car keys away, disguise the front door. There are things that you can do to remove the triggers to help reduce the chances of it happening again. Caffeine, again, is a big one that causes trouble for a lot of people, and they don't realize it because they've always drank 3 cups of coffee a day. Right, but your body changes. And so you have to adjust too. And as you mentioned before, caregiving is a continually adjusting thing. And then I'd say in the end, one time I took mom out to lunch and I realized she was wearing mismatched shoes. I was embarrassed, totally embarrassed, until I had a talk with myself and realized, you know what, we're here for our appointment on time. She's healthy, she's happy, she's doing okay. You're doing okay. Caregivers have a tough job, and we are so hard on ourselves. And I would just encourage you to don't be so hard on yourself. Learn to laugh. It doesn't matter. No one died because mom's shoes didn't match. Learn to laugh sooner, because if you can laugh, you can transform your stress into peace. And that's what I hope for you. Thank you, Denise. Did I make it on time?
Yep. Is there a last slide?
I think that is it.
Oh, okay. Oh, there we go.
Okay. Nope, there we go. There we go. Laugh and let it go. Yes. And that's my email address. You can email me if you have specific questions or anything you need help with. My website is thepurplevine.com, and there's a blog on there with helpful tips and information as well. That is my passion, is helping caregivers. So I want to help you
And
any way I can.
Debbie's presentation is uploaded in her workshop description that's on our events page in our group on Caring Our Way. So if you want to download the presentation, you can do that. Okay, thank you so much, Debbie.
Thank you.
Okay.